Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Mirror Mirror on the Wall, where we talk about the voices of the past, present, and future. Where we explore the lives and legacies of the figures of the world. Today's podcast is entitled, Is Rizal Still Relevant to Us All? As mentioned, so today we are to explore the life of one of the most profound intellectual in Philippine history, Dr. Jose Rizal. Now, come to think of it when we say national heroes, especially when asked in school, maybe we often imagine warriors or famously avengers or people who simply save lives. But Rizal, our national hero, is different. His weapon wasn't a sword, it was his pen. His weapon wasn't violence, it was knowledge, education, and love for his country. In the world of modernization, and the world we live where technology is on peak, let us dive deeper into our history and know that through Rizal's writings, actions, and sacrifice, he has left an indelible mark on Filipino identity that I hope we still see and reflect. Maybe sometimes the subjects in our school or often in college, in high school, in preschool, or at what grade in we still talk about Rizal. I hope we still see now, through this podcast, we still understand as to why we need to see through deeply into this. So today, we are to analyze the Rizal Bill, his visions of Philippine history, and what it means to be a hero in the context of his life's work. So let's start with something foundational, Rizal Bill. I believe not everyone knows as to why we study or have a subject history, life, and works of Rizal, Noli, Tangere, and El Filibusterismo, as to why we should be able to understand these books or his writings or his novels. Well, in 1956, Rizal Bill was passed, where the bill is mandated Filipinos to study Rizal's work, especially Noli, Tangere, and El Filibusterismo, in schools. Now we ask, why was this such a monumental decision? The Rizal Bill was more than just a legislative act. It was a declaration that the Philippines, as a newly independent nation, needed to look back at its past history and understand the roots of its struggle, and forge an identity free from the chains of colonialism. In Noli, Tangere, Rizal wrote about a society plagued by corruption, exploitation, and the moral decay caused by the foreign. Take for example one of his most powerful quotes from Noli, Tangere, quoted, "I die without seeing the dawn brighten over my country. You who have it to see, welcome it and take care that your destiny does not become that of the past generation." Rizal wasn't just writing for his time, he was speaking to us, to you, my listeners. His challenge wasn't just for his contemporaries to act, but for future generations to rise above the shadows of the past. The Rizal Bill was a response to this call. It was an effort to instill in every Filipino a sense of national identity, a deeper understanding of the Filipino struggle, and a respect for the freedom that Rizal has envisioned. But it wasn't a controversy that the Catholic Church opposed the bill. Why? Well, maybe because Rizal dared to critique the clergy in his novels. Noli, Tangere wasn't just a story, it was a mirror held up to the abuses of power in the Philippines at that time. Particularly when you have read Noli, Tangere, the control the church had over the Filipinos. Through this, I'll add some of my reflection or reason as to why Rizal Bill is very nice to input into our education. However, I believe we have to improve the idea as how to be given to students. Maybe rather than just letting students read or present every chapter of the books or the novels rather of Rizal, maybe it is better understood and appreciated by the students if we ever know the more of life of Rizal, that not every hero is perfect. Maybe knowing the life and flaws of Rizal, will we see and understand his sacrifice more. And rather than just presenting it through a PowerPoint, maybe we could instill and read Noli Tangere and El Filibusterismo as to we could understand and see the beauty of it. Why don't we see, or why don't we let students see the flaws, the true story of Rizal, rather than the perfect portrayal of a hero?
Now, to truly understand if Rizal is still relevant, I think we also have to look at how he reimagined our entire story. For instance, in the tripartite view of Philippine history, according to Dr. Zeus Salazar, our past is best understood into three distinct parts: the pre-colonial, the colonial, and the post-colonial period. But of course, before we break this down, I think it's important that we also realize that Rizal wasn't just looking at things. He was looking for the soul of a nation that had been told it had no history of its own. With this, let us start first with the pre-colonial period. I think what we have to remember about this is that the Philippines already had its own thriving civilization long before the Spanish even arrived. I mean, this wasn't just about having a written history, but it was about the rich culture, the trade networks, and the complex society that existed across the archipelago. Rizal also firmly rejected the Spanish portrayal of Filipinos as savages, and instead, he asserted that our society held immense value long before any civilizing mission ever touched our shores. Now, as we move from the thriving civilization, we enter the second act, the colonial period. For everyone's knowledge, Rizal often depicted this era as a time of decline or darkness, a period where oppression, corruption, and even social degradation were deeply profound. In connection to this, he argued in his essay, The Indolence of the Filipinos, that the Filipino spirit wasn't naturally lazy, as the Spaniards claimed, but rather that indolence was actually just the direct result of a corrupt system and the systemic abuses of that era. Lastly, this leads us finally to the third part, the post-colonial period, the era that was envisioned as a return to light, or a time for recovering the lost prosperity and dignity we held before the conquest. Still, it must be noted that Rizal didn't see the future as a simple repeat of the past, but to him, it was about achieving an enlightened nationhood that our country had once lost. With all this in mind, I think we can now connect this perfectly to our main question earlier. Like, are we slowly becoming the characters in Rizal's novels that he once mocked? Because if you guys can still remember, our dear listeners, in Noli Tangere, he reintroduced us to Doña Victorina, the woman who was deeply ashamed of being a Filipino. So come to think of it, if we continue prioritizing foreign trends over our own, aren't we just modern-day Victorinas?
Now, You might be wondering, where does Rizal heroism come in? Or does he really deserve to be our national hero? Was he just a writer or an activist? Well, to answer that, Rizal was actually both. But to truly understand his heroism, we need to look at the kind of heroism he portrayed. Rizal wasn't one to take up arms immediately. He believed in the power of knowledge, in the power of education, and in the power of reason to address the challenges facing the Philippines. You see, it is why up until now, not everyone may know or find the power in education and knowledge, but Rizal was a testament that our knowledge is something no one can take away from us, and that is the power of our mind. We can wield our mind as a weapon against ignorance and oppression. Because as we see it, maybe part of the problem is how we really see Rizal. As stated by Ambet Ocampo in his podcast, history should be chismis with a point. Because obviously, Rizal was a human just like us as well. He wasn't a perfect statue. In fact, an article by Philstar also reminds us that there is no official declaration explicitly proclaiming him as our national hero. It was just us who chose him to be our hero. So you all see, it's easy for us to say that Rizal is our national hero. But have we really understood what it means to be a hero? It's easy to put him or his name on a pedestal, but we cannot also deny the fact that it's extremely hard to follow his footsteps. We may remember his death every December, but we sometimes also ignore the things that he died for. Rizal saw knowledge, his pen and paper as the ultimate power to freedom. He speaks education with understanding and believes that Filipinos could change their fate through collective action and knowledge. As we end our podcast today, I think it is just right that we answer our title, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. Is Rizal still relevant to us all? Well, the answer is a resounding yes. Rizal isn't it still relevant up to this day? Not because he's perfect or flawless, but because he is the mirror that asks if nagbago na nga ba talaga tayo o nagpalit lang tayo ng bihis. With that, we shall also leave you with this question. If Rizal walked into a room full of people today, would he see a nation of Ibaras or a room full of Doña Victorinas? Now, as a Filipino, I want to leave you with this question that has been on my mind as I reflect on Rizal's legacy. Naging totoo pa ba tayo sa mga naging pangarap ni Rizal para sa ating lahat? O paunti-unti na rin nating nagiging kamukha ang mga karakter na kinukutya niya noon sa nobela niya? Again, are we still true to the dreams Rizal had for us as people? Or are we slowly portraying or becoming like the characters he critiqued in his novels? Characters like who, despite their potentials and credibility, were a portrayal of a system where corruption and injustice is present. Are we still holding onto his ideals of unity, education, and reform? Or are we letting self-interest and division slowly erode the values we fought?